Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Right Guys podcast, where we watch the Banana Republic keep on spinning. And now your hosts, Josh Hammerling and Max McGuire.
Welcome back. Another edition of the Right Guys podcast. My name is Max McGuire, here with Mr. Producer Josh Hammerling. A lot to get into today. Yeah. If you like hoaxes, we got hoaxes. New hoax just dropped. The Trump Arlington Cemetery hoax. The claim from Democrats that Donald Trump broke the law by laying a wreath at a fallen soldier's grave and taking a picture of it, and therefore also violated his parole, his bail. So the left calling for him to be immediately incarcerated. Crazy stuff. We'll get to that a little bit later in the program. But before we get to that, we are joined today a guest. We're trying to have more guests on now because they usually leads to good conversations. Our first guest is Anders W Edwardsson. He's the author of a book, Radical Betrayal: How Liberals and Neoconservatives Are Wrecking American Exceptionalism. Really interesting stuff. So let's welcome on Anders. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Josh. How are you doing today?
Good. It's ever good to have you here. So first off, give us a little history of you, a little background. I mean, some have called you the conservative European, so kind of touch on that a little bit.
What, don't you buy my Boston accent?
It's really east.
I'm originally Swede, actually. I grew up in the socialist utopia of Sweden, and I couldn't get away fast enough. Because as Ronald Reagan said, they only have socialism in two places: heaven, where they don't need it, and hell, where it already exists.
There you go. So tell us a little bit about you, and then we'll get into the book.
Yeah, I'm a little more than half a century old. As I said, I grew up in Sweden. I very early in life became some sort of right-wing ghost. I like freedom and personal responsibility and small government. And I tried to change Sweden. I failed. So I'm a political refugee over here in the greatest state ever created by man, the US of A. And I'm a MA in history, and I have a PhD in politics. So hopefully I know what I'm talking about.
And are you currently teaching anywhere?
No, I have tried to teach, but the educational system is just so ideologically corrupt. I gave up. I eke out a living on being a online pundit and writing books and writing articles and that kind of stuff.
That's interesting. I was reading up on you before. You taught for a bit at Catholic University, right?
No, I took my PhD in politics at CUA. I teach at a couple of community colleges and a couple of private universities, but that's it.
Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit about your book. I didn't have a chance to get a copy before, but I did read a bit of your what was it, your thesis or your dissertation. Seems to have been on a similar topic. Walk us through. It's interesting because as native born Americans, our view, I never really thought about it this way, but it makes a ton of sense. Our view of American exceptionalism probably would ring very differently to someone overseas or someone who comes here from a foreign country, what is it that made you want to kind of dive in and research American exceptionalism, which for us, usually it's just a throwaway line at a political rally?
Yeah, I mean, I could talk for hours about this, but if you boil it down, what American exceptionalism actually is, it's the American form of your standard form of nationalism. It's the story of America, why America came to be, and what America is, and why she's the best country to live in. From that perspective, it's just another form of nationalism. Swedes have a similar story about their country, the French, the British, they all have this. I would say if there's any form of difference between Swedish nationalism or French nationalism and then American nationalism, i.e., American exceptionalism, is that it's basically true. Nationalist things over in Europe is often hyperbole. It's a lot of mumbo jumbo. And France is the biggest country, best country in the world because of AIDS. When it comes to the US, because if you go back and study the founding fathers, the founders of the US Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, they actually sat down at a specific point in history and decided to create a new country that should be different from all the other ones. All the countries in Europe in the 16th, 1700s were autocratic monarchies. They suppressed free speech. They suppressed if you were a Catholic in Sweden or a Protestant in France, they knocked your head. They just didn't accept you. The founding fathers just said, let's create a country that is different, where the people rule and where you can have different opinions. And that's the very core, the crux of American exceptionalism. And up until very recently, it was actually true. You could come to this great country in the 17, 18, 1900s, and maybe even in the early 2000s, and just live your life, create a new life, and do what you wanted to do as long as you just accepted that America was different. Nowadays, these socialists, AOC, Kamala Harris, these people, they just want to turn the US into another European welfare state. And that if you ask about my book, that's why I wrote it. I don't want them to succeed in this hijacking of what it means to be an American.
It's interesting when I think about American exceptionalism, and I think like in terms of like 1700s, 1800s, it kind of reminds me of the old debate of nature versus nurture. Obviously, the founding fathers created, Articles of Confederation. We'll put that aside, but the U.S. Constitution, try number 2, right, was an exceptional document, and definitely did set us up for success and allow us to have a country where we could become exceptional. But it was the hard work of Americans in the decades and centuries later that kind of lived up to that promise and was able to accomplish that. I wonder whether the U.S. would have been exceptional if we didn't have an ocean separating us from Asia and Europe. I remember reading a speech that Thomas Jefferson gave, I believe when he was president, talking about one of the exceptional things about America, not like American exceptionalism the way we're talking, but one of the exceptional things about America is we're so far removed from the chaos of Europe that we don't have to worry about the entangling wars that will burn entire cities to the ground every decade or so. We have a chance to kind of grow and advance. What do you think about that? Because you could put the American Constitution over in Europe, and you might find like a case study where they developed the same as we do. But it seems to me that this country was uniquely positioned, at least geographically, to kind of take what the founders gave us and run with it.
Yes, absolutely. America was one in a lifetime opportunity, or rather one in a world history opportunity. It will never happen again. It had never happened before. It was just because what you say, people from Europe, primarily what we today call the United Kingdom and Ireland, came over here and created, they had a freedom tradition that their kings and their politicians were doing their best to kill, to strangle. And they came over here, found this new area of fertile land. Sure, the Indians were here, and that's a different story. But they just said, let's give this a go. Let's try to do something different. Let's set up a minimal government who is doing just the very basics on the federal level: defense, foreign policy, some infrastructure, and a few more things. And then leave the rest to people themselves in the form of the states, in form of counties, communities, churches. Just let people live their lives and see how it works. And it worked perfectly. America went from being the living standard in North America in the late 1700s was probably on average, or even slightly below what it was in England and France and Sweden and those countries. And you gave people freedom to mind their own business, and they did it. We became the richest, most wealthy, and most peaceful country in the history of humankind in less than 100 years. Then things from the around 1900 started to go sideways, but that's the next part of our discussion.
I'm enjoying this conversation because, as I said at the start, it's always nice to get someone who was born outside the United States to get their take on it, because oftentimes it's a different perspective, it's a different approach to it. It reminds me a bit of a very famous man who did that many years ago, Alexis de Tocqueville, when he came to America, and he was one of the first who considered America to be exceptional. And one of the things that he found remarkable was that Americans didn't seem to be preoccupied with all the things that Europe was preoccupied, like the arts, right? Literature, scientific advancements. Those are the things. And that America seemed to be more interested in kind of just putting their nose down, getting to work. And he thought that was exceptional. And which is a little bit ironic, because if you were to go to like sub-Saharan Africa today, you find a random villager, they'll be able to tell you who Michael Jackson was, right? It's ironic that the things that America has kind of transported abroad, were exactly the things that Alexis de Tocqueville thought we weren't interested in. But I guess that's a pursuit that you can afford to do once you've made a name for yourself, once you've become that economic powerhouse that you were talking about. There's not really a question. It's just it's interesting as I'm hearing you talk about this. I'm reminded of back in Poli-Sci 101 when they slapped democracy in America down on our desk and said, "Read it."
No, yeah, I mean, if I may actually argue with the host here a little bit, De Tocqueville said exactly what you just said, that Americans, beside religion, they don't really have any artistic interest, as you said. And I would, as a man of history and the arts, I would say that that's maybe not necessarily a strength all the time, because if you want to keep a great cultural heritage, you need to prop it up with a lot of art stuff, history, literature, poetry, all the things that when we are Americans. I'm saying we because I'm an American now. So we to this economic powerhouse you're talking about needs artistic scaffolding. Otherwise, it just dissipates, it disappears, dissolves into some form of just materialistic. I want it kind of stuff. So that's needed, and Tocqueville was very clear and very right about this, and he saw this, the freedom of that Americans have were given by the founding fathers, left them the room, the breadth, and the width of succeeding in a materialistic term. He also saw the danger of just focusing on materialistic stuff.
Yeah.
Now, this is we could have a 10-hour academic seminar about this, but it's he meant that just beware that you are not becoming too materialistic, just caring about, and this is one of the things that has gone astray with American history since around 100 and 125 years ago. Progressivists, liberals, socialists have turned the federal government into a materialistic giveaway machine. They just think, tax the rich, as they call them, and just give freebies to people, and we will all be happy. Reality doesn't work that way, and that was what de Tocqueville warned us about.
I always read, when I read that, the first thing that always would come to me would be like, of course we don't have, like in the early 1800s when he's over here, of course we don't have a bustling art scene, unless, of course, we don't have a fantastic scientific scene. Of course, we don't have all of these musicians everywhere. Those were professions that were largely propped up by the aristocracy, right? And the United States, having no aristocracy, has no patronage class, no formal aristocracy to say, hey, I'm going to pay for you to be an artist. The most famous song in the United States, if I had to bet my money on it, probably would have been Yankee Doodle Dandy, because that's what the soldiers were singing as they were going to kill themselves some redcoats, right? So without an aristocracy, and when you're coming from a Revolutionary War, it never was all that surprising to me that he didn't come and find a bustling opera house, right? Because obviously the conditions that you would expect that to flourish in a London or a Paris, it wouldn't be there. By definition, you've talked we have a few minutes left, but you've talked a little bit about welfare and growing up. I'm a 90s kid, but growing up in the era of George W. Bush, of American exceptionalism being like a rallying cry to go overseas, right? Like if you look at the movie Team America, World Police, infamously, the big joke is like, oh, we're going to go bring them some freedom. Right. I see a lot of comparisons in how, well, the neocons use American exceptionalism largely to advance operations abroad, whether that be foreign aid to prop up countries, or literally regime change. Like, we know better than you. We're going to come in. We're so exceptional. You should follow us, right? And then you get really complicated things of multi-ethnic, multinational states like Iraq trying to put 3 different nations inside of one country's borders. Of course, it's going to be completely inflamed. Domestically, though, you see a similar kind of goal in welfare policy of American exceptionalism being a driving kind of the welfare state. And some people have even gone so far as to call it like warfare, welfare state of that American exceptionalism is driving, that narrative is driving both. What do you see in terms of that kind of comparison between the two?
Yeah, I mean, that's the very crux of the matter. To connect back, I know we are running out of time here, but America was set up with 2 basic things. The federal government should do as little as possible and leave things to states, counties, and people selves to take care of on the home front. When it came to foreign policy, it said America should be a model. Other countries, other peoples can look at America and be amazed or be scared, whatever. If they want to copy us and do what we are doing, they are free to do so. But we are not going overseas to implement the American system on the point of a gun. And both these things, those 2 pillars of American exceptionalism, was wying well up until around 1900, when on one side what's already then called progressives said that no, America should be more like Europe and have centralized top-down welfare states, i.e. people in Washington should sit and hand out entitlements and stuff and that kind of stuff, and just do good for people, as they say. But it never works when it comes from top down. On the other side, it was this: America should be a model, a shining city on a hill, as Reagan said, and for other peoples to copy. But with the American-Spanish War in 1898, we started to get a lot of American politicians started to show hubris and said we will go abroad with military and force other people to do what we are doing. That never works, because every culture, every country is unique, and both these 2 pillars has since around 1900 been slowly but steadily fading away, because the politicians in DC just want us to be like France or Sweden or Britain or Germany or whatever. And that's the thing with my book. I warn, we are at a fork in the road right now. In November 5th, if the people vote for Kamala Harris and all this craziness, we will go down the avenue of France and Sweden. We will just be another gray, half-working welfare state that are traveling around the world trying to force other people to do what we are doing. And that's not America. That's not American exceptionalism.
Yeah. No, you mentioned Ronald Reagan sitting on a hill of wanting to kind of exude American exceptionalism. But when John Winthrop first gave that speech in Massachusetts, he didn't have any national designs, right? He didn't have any let's spread America abroad. He wanted the Massachusetts Bay Colony to be an example for Christians around the world, right?
Yes.
So it is interesting how even right there, I love Ronald Reagan, I support him, but like that whole bit of Puritanism, they just want to be left alone, right?
Exactly.
They just want to be left alone. They didn't want boots on the ground. Let's spread democracy by bayonet. They want to be left alone, and for the world to look at their example and see that it's something worth copying, or that maybe these new colonies are somewhere worth moving to. Not, oh wow, we're going to make the rest of the world just like us. So it's interesting how even just something as simple as that, I don't want to say perverted, because I don't think that's fair to Ronald Reagan's legacy, but like an old childhood playground game of telephone, it just changes over time to the point where today it means something a little bit different than when we started.
Yes. Absolutely, and that's why the subtitle of my book is how liberals and neoconservatives are wrecking American exceptionalism, because American exceptionalism originally was this thing. America is different. Copy us if you want to, but we will not force you to do it. And the original American model, with a very small national government that just took care of like defense and foreign policy and a few other things, and leave the rest to the states and counties and people themselves. That worked perfectly, as I said before. We became the richest country on the planet within less than a century. But then politicians are like, I don't know what. They always want more power. They always want to tell you what to do. And this temptation became so big around 1900 that at American politicians corrupted both pillars of American exceptionalism. They started to tell people here at home what to do, how to live, and what to think that is right and wrong and stuff like that. And abroad, said, do Woodrow Wilson onwards, the whole world should just look and function like America. And it's a nice pipe dream, but that's not how history and humanity works.
No, it definitely isn't. Well, Anders, we're out of time, but I'd love to have you again. We can talk more about this. As you said, we could do it for hours.
Absolutely.
And so before we go, where can people find your book? It's available on Amazon. I can put that up on the screen.
Amazon has tried to hide it by forbidding my publisher to place ads on Amazon and stuff like. But you can buy it on Amazon. You can buy it on Barnes and Nobles and Walmart online, and more or less any online book store is carrying it. So if nothing else, you can go to radicalbetrayal.com, one of my websites, and order it there.
Okay, well, everyone should definitely go out and get a copy. I'm gonna order a copy just because it's very interesting.
If you send me your address, I will send you a signed copy.
Oh, well, thank you. That'd be great. We'll definitely do that. Well, Anders, thank you so much for the conversation. Really, really interesting stuff. Love to have you back. Thank you for joining us.
Glad to be back. Yep. Thank you.
Oh. Josh isn't ready to come back yet. So that was our interview with Anders Edwardsson. Again, if you haven't heard about him, I highly suggest you read. I haven't read the book yet, but I read a bit of his thesis, his dissertation that's available online. Really interesting stuff. Definitely
conversations. I like to listen to this. Some of the things he was saying, I was just like, it's great. And to have that European perspective in there, or at least and to see a new American talking about it, right? Americans.
It's always fun. It's always fun to see. He mentioned he's an American now, but to see someone else's view of things, it really can open your eyes and kind of change your own perspective, right? because it's something like American exceptionalism. As I said, growing up in the 1990s, growing up through George W. Bush, American exceptionalism to me would have a much different connotation than versus someone living in Iraq, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So interesting conversation. If you like these kind of interviews, these kind of thoughtful interviews, definitely like, subscribe to channel, like, comment, share. We're going to be doing more of these interviews because they usually produce pretty good conversations.
Wow. So tell me again how laying a wreath becomes a freaking crime. It's the reason we love to have Anders on, but how do you lay a wreath on a grave, take a picture, and it's a campaign something violation?
No, it's a federal crime.
It's a federal crime.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, it isn't. It isn't. But new hoax alert. I feel like Exhibit and Pimp My Ride. If you like hoaxes, we got hoaxes inside of hoaxes. New hoax just dropped that Donald Trump is a felon because he dared to have a photographer and videographer capture what he did at Arlington National Ceremony. So there's two bits to this. Donald Trump went with two Gold Star families who lost loved ones during Biden-Harris, their abysmal withdrawal from Afghanistan. So he went with those families to lay a wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldier, and then went with them to their loved ones' gravestone, to put flowers down there as well. Now, Joe Biden was on vacation. He couldn't have been bothered. And Kamala Harris was doing whatever Kamala Harris does. We don't really know.
She's giving interviews?
A pre-recorded interview.
Okay.
With a male chaperone.
It was weird, right?
So, we'll get into that later.
Yeah, it's weird.
But you've never heard this before, that if you go to Arlington, I mean, Donald Trump's the 45th president of the United States. This isn't just someone off the street walking into Arlington National Cemetery. If Donald Trump so wishes, he is entitled to be buried at Arlington. So like this isn't like right next to War Hero, right? Same cemetery as War Hero. So this isn't like just someone went off the street and tried to commercialize Arlington National Cemetery. He's the 45th president, right?
Yeah.
Every president goes to Arlington. Every president has photos or videos taken of them going to Arlington. And every president uses those photographs at some point during their campaign.
Oh my God.
It just happens.
Everywhere.
It happens.
All the time. It happens.
The difference is that's almost always when they're in office. Probably count on one hand the number of times that a president has gone. I mean, you don't get this. You don't get people leaving office and then they're still campaigning, right?
Yeah.
So Donald Trump went there not only to show respect, but also to highlight how terrible Joe Biden's withdrawal from Afghanistan was. You can't remove that from the equation. What the left is saying, though, is that by going there and laying a wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldier and laying bouquets of flowers at the gravestones of loved ones lost by these Gold Star families, and by taking photographs with the Gold Star families at the gravestones, which the Gold Star families asked for, requested, said, hey, bring your photographer. We want to take a picture with you.
And Trump took the time to do it.
That was a crime because it constituted a political activity. Here is the... Go ahead. As I said,
was going to say, right after the whole Jack Smith, we reconfigured the charges thing too, right? So a double header is suddenly after like a conduct. I mean, you can't make this stuff up.
Yes. Yeah. So this is the CFR 32 CFR 553.32, conduct of memorial services and ceremonies. Now, if you've watched the footage of Donald Trump laying that wreath down and putting down that bouquet of flowers, he did not engage in any type of disrespectful conduct during memorial services and ceremonies. But the part that they're saying he violated is subsection C. I'll highlight it here. Memorial services and ceremonies at Army National Military Cemeteries will not include partisan political activities. That is what the left is now claiming that Donald Trump violated by going there. They're saying that no matter what his intention was, even though he was invited by the Gold Star families, he was invited by them, that the act of going there and doing what every president does was inherently political and therefore a violation of the law.
So is this a violation of the law? That's Biden at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. I mean, you're always running for office as president, right? Whether you're in year 1 or year 4, because then you got another term. Like everything that you're doing is for the next term. So when they take this picture, does this mean that he's committed the same crime? So if we take it one step further, go ahead.
Yeah. The difference that the left is saying is that those photographs would have been taken either by an official Army photographer, an official White House photographer, or the media pool. Like that was a CBS News, an AP, a Getty Images, right? It was the act of Donald Trump bringing a campaign photographer with him, which, let's be clear, he brought a campaign aide who pulled out their camera, their phone. We're not talking about a full documentary film crew, right?
Total horseshit. I mean, I can't. I mean, everybody knows what this is, and we can all smell it. But this is the lengths they're willing to go to. They're trying to create crimes inside of his own political campaign. Yeah. I mean, the man won't be able to take a crap later without it being a crime, right? They will pass laws in DC that if he defecates anywhere, he'll go to jail, right?
So this is a part of the Federal Register, not for that, but it talks about the Hatch Act, which is like what government officials can and cannot do when they're involved in political campaigns. And so this part of the Federal Register actually defines political activity. It defines partisan as when used as an adjective means related to a political party. So at no point did you see anything related to the RNC.
No.
There. No. But let's just say political activity. Political activity means an activity directly towards the success or failure of a political party, candidate for partisan political office, or partisan political group. Now, if you are suspicious about Donald Trump's ulterior motives, that's fine. You can be as suspicious as you want. But even if your suspicions are true, this is still an activity that, at worst, would be indirectly put towards his success as a political candidate. For this to be partisan political activity, they need to drag a podium out and have him give a press conference on top of a grave site, right? Or they need to bring in an AV system and have him do a rally at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier.
Bullhorn would technically count, right?
Yeah.
If he got out there and he's just talking into a bullhorn, but that didn't happen.
He'd have to hand out "Make America Great Again" hats.
He'd flyers, need to say, anything, right?
Yeah. He'd need to say, "Vote for me, vote for me, vote for me." He didn't do that. He went to pay his respects at the request of the families. He was nothing but respectful.
Yeah.
But because they took photographs, and this is where every time they go after Trump, it's to read between the lines and to twist the statute just to get him.
Yeah.
New York indicted him by saying that, you gave your lawyer a check that you put in your book as legal expenses, but we actually think it's an illegal campaign contribution. So even though you can donate as much money as you want to your campaign, we think it's a felony. Twisting the definitions, right? Twisting the definitions to be, just like Jack Smith. The Presidential Records Act says that you're allowed to take stuff with you and give them back as you realize you don't have the right to it. But we don't think you're going fast enough with that. So we're going to indict you.
Crime
right?
on you.
Every one of these attempts to get Trump require like legalistic backflips. Like you have a contortionist. You have to literally twist and pull the statute to make it make sense. And what you get is a novel interpretation of the statute. No president has ever been accused of violating the law because he had his picture taken at Arlington. It doesn't happen, right? And if Donald Trump had said no reporters allowed, no press allowed, no photographers allowed, the narrative would have been Donald Trump is attacking the free press.
Yeah.
The free press has a right to document this.
Trump hides something at Arlington.
Yeah, the press were actually fighting to get more photographers there. So this narrative that that there shouldn't have been any photographers, the press, each outlet wanted their own videographer, their own photographer, which in an event like this, you say, no, you're going to go by, we have one pool videographer. Yeah. You'll all get the footage, right?
This is about respect, not photos.
Yeah. Yeah. So they're twisting it. They're twisting it to try and get him. And again, there's a reason. There's a reason. And that's because his sentencing is next month, right? But as a condition for his bail, in that case, and in all of the Jack Smith cases, one of the conditions is you can't commit any more crimes.
Wow.
So if they were to get him on this, that would be the commission of a crime while out on bail, which means the bail would immediately be revoked and he'd be remanded into custody, orange jumpsuit, handcuffs, you're in jail.
Part of the plan the whole time.
Yeah.
So let me get this straight. They are trying to weaponize his mere presence anywhere as political activity.
Yes.
So just him being in the mall would be political activity. If he goes to another grave, if he goes to a military base, right, and he's invited on by somebody there to give a speech or to just walk around and say hi to the soldiers, his mere presence would be political activity. So there's nowhere this man can go now where he wouldn't violate a constitution like that. And it just doesn't feel like banana republic dictator going after your enemy bullshit that I don't know what to tell you.
It is an unrealistic application of the law. It's the product of the fact that Donald Trump's the first person ever to run for president and become president who has never been given the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
He has never received the benefit of the doubt about anything, right? This could very easily be, oh, well, Donald Trump must not have known. No, instead it's become he violated the law and he desecrated our fallen heroes, right? That's the narrative.
Yeah, and that's the headline they want.
This is the natural product when you have a country where Donald Trump not only is never given the benefit of the doubt, but is seen by many to never deserve the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
Like this is here's a tweet from an organization called Vote Vex. They are not nonpartisan. They are far left. They are progressive. They are the Bernie Sanders of veterans organizations. They like to brand themselves as, oh, we're nonpartisan. He said, and there you go. Donald Trump is using footage and photos his campaign took at Arlington National Cemetery for political purposes against the rules and laws that govern this hallowed ground. Arlington officials tried to stop him from politicizing the cemetery, and Trump staff physically attacked them. We'll get to that in a second. The whole episode is sickening and affront to all those hundreds of thousands of families who never agreed to allow their deceased loved ones to be dragged into politics. And this is just Trump on his personal TikTok.
Really?
Putting this out. So it's disgusting. It is disgusting.
What a hoax. But this is a hoax after hoax after hoax.
Hoax on hoax on hoax.
Yeah.
You like hoaxes? We got hoaxes on top of hoaxes. But the other part of this hoax is what you just read there. That Donald Trump physically attacked. No, sorry, Trump's staff physically attacked the staff at Arlington Cemetery. Now, before I even get into this, do you think that happened?
Not at all. I mean, if such a thing had happened, it would be all over the news. It would be everywhere.
This started with altercation. That's the first headline, right? They had an altercation.
Okay,
we'll go down
what
here
was
and we'll read.
Oh my gosh.
We'll read the bit on it.
Yeah.
A source with knowledge of the incident
Oh, an unnamed
said
source.
the cemetery official. Oh damn! Said the cemetery official tried to prevent Trump staffers from filming and photographing in a section where recent U.S. casualties are buried. The source said Arlington officials had made clear that only cemetery staff members would be authorized to take photographs or film in the area known as Section 60. When the cemetery official tried to prevent Trump campaign staff from entering Section 60, campaign staff verbally abused and pushed the official aside.
Oh, do we have video of that? I'd love
We
to
don't.
see it.
And the Trump campaign has said if they continue to make these defamatory claims, they will release the footage that shows that's not what happened. But this term of verbal abuse, verbal abuse, the left takes anything and it becomes an attack, right?
Yeah.
An attack.
Yeah.
If Donald Trump criticizes Kamala Harris's policies, the headline is Trump attacks Kamala Harris because she's black. You know what I mean? Like that's the narrative. So we have the Trump campaign. They had received permission to bring a photographer. The families that invited them there asked for Trump and his photographer to go take a picture next to their loved one's gravestone. And what it appears to be is that there's a difference in interpretation, right? The Trump campaign said, hey, we have the approval to document all of this. We told the media not to bring their photographers because we're going to document it and give them the footage. So we can't just like not document this. Also, he's the president of the United States. Everything he does gets documented. But you also then have the staff that says, oh, well, Section 60 is different from the tomb of the unknown soldier. And I can understand why, as a matter of policy, they don't want people just doing content creation. Because even if you take a photo in front of one gravestone, the gravestone next to you is in the photo, right? Yeah. People visiting loved ones will be behind you. So I can understand why they want to be very hesitant to let this happen. The narrative, though, that the Trump teen assaulted her. It seems like a wild, like we talked about with our interview at the beginning, a playground game of telephone. Started out with an altercation, then it became verbal abuse, which let's be honest for a second. Outside of a marital situation where husband and wife are just being really mean to each other for years, right? When's the last time you heard someone in public say, "Oh, they were verbally abusive"? They said mean things.
Yeah,
they weren't nice. This is the way to kind of characterize a conversation that obviously the staff didn't like as verbal abuse. That's a little weird. And they said pushed aside. What it actually seems, if you actually read the story, is that she blocked them from moving somewhere. You block people from following the president. Yeah. You're going to get a little pushback, right? I mean, we just had Donald Trump take a bullet to the head. This idea that Donald Trump and his entourage can be blocked by anyone. And again, this is not just someone off the street. It's the 45th president of the United States with a Gold Star family going to visit and lay a wreath at their loved one's gravesite. And you had a staffer step in the way and try to physically block campaign staff from going, right? So
just the levels of desperation are crazy. It just doesn't make any sense. I mean, first they tried getting rid of Biden. They threw in the no candidate. I mean, the desperation levels have been huge since the first debate, right? And this is just one more thing, trying to be the insurance for getting this guy convicted. They have to get him off the campaign trail. They have to start inventing crimes. And this is it. This is total invention of crime.
Yeah.
I mean, and gross misapplication of the law. There's so much wrong here, and he has to defend it. What if they do charge him? And now he's got to pay for that too. I don't care how rich you are. You can only spend so much on lawyers before it bleeds you dry.
Here's the thing. This law, this regulation is almost certainly unconstitutional. Now, you could regulate the conduct and say you're not allowed to do anything disrespectful. And I'm all for that, right? No TikTok dances on grave sites. I completely understand that. But the idea that someone can't follow the 45th president of the United States and video an interaction with the Gold Star family, because without the video, right, you know what the narrative would be? Oh, that didn't exist. They're just making that up.
Yeah.
Well, that didn't exist. They're making that up. The Trump team released a letter from the joint letter from the families saying that, no, they asked Trump to go to their loved ones' grave sites, and they asked him to bring the photographer because they wanted nice photographs.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, though. Because it was a campaign staffer, they're saying that was inherently a partisan political activity. So if Donald Trump Donald Trump was to bring a random person off the street, hand them a cell phone, have them record the same things that the staffers recorded, upload it to their personal social media account, and then Trump's campaign pull that video down and use it themselves, it would be completely legal. But they're saying because the videographer was on the payroll, that makes this inherently a political activity. But you get to the same issue with the Donald Trump New York indictment, right?
Yeah.
New York State said the only reason that Donald Trump would want to pay off Stormy Daniels is to help his political campaign. But the problem is, it also helped him personally, also helped him with his wife. He doesn't want his wife to know about that. Doesn't want his son to know about that. Helps him professionally. It would hurt his business for something like that. Yeah. Those allegations, even if untrue, to come out. Right? It would hurt his standing in the community, standing in his church. There's lots of reasons to do something. And traditionally, as long as there have been other reasons to do something, the law has never just been able to define it as 100% political, right? If you want to go get a haircut, right? And you get a haircut, fine. And you pay cash and you don't take a receipt. FEC is not going to come and say, okay, where's that campaign expenditure? Because obviously the only reason you'd want a haircut is so you look good at your campaign rallies, right? Well, obviously, that's part of it, but just as a person, you want to have a haircut. So that's the issue with Trump. At every step of the way, every interpretation of every law that they use to go after him, they assume the absolute worst possible intention. Worst possible intention.
Yeah. Yeah, and then they go after him for it. And this makes me reflect on having all of those celebrities at Democrat events, right? They're there supplying their fame, and that's worth cash. And that's not a campaign contribution in any way.
It should be.
But they'll hold this camera photograph to the same standard so that it represents that, and it happens on a national cemetery, right? So it makes it even a more heinous law, and then they get to label them as stuff like vet hater and all that craziness, man. It's totally asinine. It's insane to think about that. I mean, anybody that's been on a DNC stage, Megan the Stallion, 3 Stallion, whatever they call it, right? I mean, the Stallion. I mean, she's expensive for an hour's worth of work, right?
$200,000 plus. I think there's a difference between saying, hey, this is our political rally, and someone just so happens to be here. Why don't you come on, Bruce Springsteen, and sing the national anthem for us?
Yeah.
I think there's one thing to do that, and it's an entirely different thing to say, and now we pause this campaign rally for a fully produced private concert, complete with backup dancers, right? Costume changes, pyrotechnics. I mean, like you get into it.
Money's crazy.
It's a concert. It's a concert, right?
It's a free concert.
And at that point, it should be treated as an in-kind campaign contribution. And since she charges more than $3,300 to do one of those things, it's a felony.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how they would go after Republicans if they did it.
Yes. And that that shows you just how two-faced the whole thing actually is. It's they just want to turn the law on its head to make sure that they can go after him. I mean, this is the last desperate attempt, right? I mean, we said for a long time the last thing they're going to try to do is kill him, and they tried that and they failed. I mean, what's left for them to do? I mean, try to kill him again.
They're trying to put him in jail.
Yeah, and that's all they've got left.
Every time you hear every time you hear the news talk about his trials, they all say the same thing, with the exception of the New York one, which they might not even get to sentencing because Donald Trump has said whether the judge throws out the case or not, he's immediately going to appeal it.
Yeah.
Right? The question of whether it was impermissible for the judge to bring forward evidence and testimony that the Supreme Court now says you can't bring in at all because it's an official act. If the judge decides to say, screw it, it's not that big of a deal, you're still going to be sentenced, Trump's going to immediately appeal that.
Yeah.
So other than that, right, the headline for everything is there will not be a trial before Election Day. Right? And it's looking like Donald Trump's not going to go to prison, even if the judge incarcerates him, right?
Yeah.
Until months later after those appeals play out. So what does the left want? They want their pound of flesh now. Yeah. They're going to look and try and find something to get him.
Well, they just want him off the trail, right? They don't want him campaigning. They know he's got way too much momentum, and they are trying everything in their power to slow it down. I mean, we see it with the RFK thing. Like, RFK went from being like a somewhat third-party spoiler that people didn't think too much about, and now he's an evil man that nobody likes because he's with the orange man, right? Tulsi Gabbard, I mean, she saw the criminality of her own party gets out because she knows nothing gets done, and now she's evil, right? I mean, even though she served, people are like, well, she doesn't get the credit for doing all the things she did. I mean, it's desperation. You can smell the desperation. You can feel the desperation. I just don't know how much further they're going to go. I don't know where they're going to take it. Hey, by the way, Fox News is reporting that the FBI just released the photos at that Trump rally with what the shooter had before him, before all the evidence somehow made its way off the roof and it was washed off and the body was cremated. So that's a different show, folks.
Yeah, that's going to be a different show. Listen, they're going to go after Trump however they can. Just last week, there was that story that Donald Trump was calling Netanyahu and telling him not to have a peace deal. And the reporter who made that statement has since apologized, saying she didn't have any inside knowledge of it, but was just reading other reports. Right. But that put people into a frenzy because they say, oh, that's a violation of the Logan Act. The Logan Act says it's a crime for any private citizen to negotiate on behalf of the United States with a foreign power on any issue of dispute with the United States. Right. So if Donald Trump said, I'm really president, I'll negotiate this, it could come into play. No one's ever been prosecuted for the Logan Act. Yeah. Because we have this pesky thing called the First Amendment. If I want to pick up the phone and I want to call Netanyahu right now and tell him what I think he should do, I have every damn right to do that.
Right to do that. Plus, I mean, what about Rodman going to North Korea and hanging out with Kim Jong, whatever it is?
Yeah.
I mean, wouldn't he be just as guilty of that crime? I mean,
Josh, last week when this all came out, there was a super PAC, a leftist super PAC, that wrote a letter to Donald Trump's Judge Merchan in New York, informing him that Donald Trump, according to news reports, has now violated the Logan Act, which is a violation of the conditions of his bail, of his parole. And not only saying you should lock him up right now, but you should use this during sentencing. And this is why it's so important to lock Donald Trump up, because if you allow him to go out, he's just going to commit more crimes. That was a letter sent to the judge. The judge received that letter before the media backtracked and said, this is all speculation, none of it's real. So they are going to do anything they can to try and get Trump.
Protect democracy, though. Let's not forget that they're the ones trying to protect democracy by taking your candidate out. Just
The
and
old
people
saying.
want this.
Okay.
Well, I was going to say people want this. They're chomping at the bit to make sure he gets arrested for fake crimes. The witch hunt isn't over, man. It's just not.
The old saying is that the average American commits 3 felonies a day without even knowing it.
Yeah.
And that's because of just how big the legal code has become, that we don't all know what we're doing wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, simple thing as not felony, but simple thing as like a rolling stop at a stop sign. How many times can we all say we've done that? Right?
Yeah.
That's a crime. So if the average American commits 3 crimes a day, what do you think they'd find if you were Donald Trump walking around with a pool of photographers and videographers watching everything you do at every minute of every day?
Yeah.
And then you have a whole set of keyboard warriors going through the Federal Register and saying, excuse me, technically, this could be a political activity. And technically, you can't have a political activity during a ceremony.
Oh my gosh. And they exist out there. I immediately saw the giant guy with the half-grown beard sitting there typing away on the computer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is
and
why
that's the
Donald
army
Trump
they put together.
This is why Donald Trump didn't release his tax returns. Because
Yeah.
he has the IRS going through him. Why would he want every liberal tax attorney or just keyboard warrior to look through it to try and find something?
Yeah.
Makes no sense. All right. Well, we're almost out of time, but I want to share something with you because we've been talking on this show about the importance of going a little bit deeper than just the top lines of the polls. New poll out from Activote. Activote, a poll for Michigan with leaners, found Harris tied with Trump 50-50.
In Michigan?
50. Yeah. Technically, she's 50.1% to Donald Trump's 49.9%. But what's 0.1% among friends? They're tied 50-50. You look at this, okay. 400 likely voters, 4.9% margin of error. That's interesting. But then you actually read the study. And Josh, this is going to blow your mind. Pollsters can do a lot with the results through waiting to make a poll say what they want it to say, even if the respondents didn't give them that when they asked them.
Really?
So here's Harris-Trump essentially tied. But here is I've shown you this chart before. Let's look right down here. Affiliation. Donald Trump winning 21% of Democrats?
No
Donald Trump
way.
winning 78% of independents?
No.
Donald Trump, how can Donald Trump win 21% of Democrats and 78% of independents, and he's tied? Well, the answer lies right here. They weighted it to be what's called D plus 25.
So it's already starting with a plus.
Their weighted sample was Democrats plus 25, meaning Democrats 55, Republicans 30, independents only 15%. As we talked about on this show, right? It's pretty much like 30%, 30%, 40%. 30% Democrats, 30% Republicans, 40% independents. So they overvalued the Democrats, significantly underweighted the independents, and they created a poll result that shows Kamala Harris winning by 0.2%. Even though Donald Trump is winning 60% of the suburban vote. Right? Like, you look through this, it's not all that different from what we've covered on this, right? Yeah, he's winning about 35, 36% of the urban vote, right? He's winning men, she's winning females. Fine. But they get to the weighting and they play the games in the weighting and how they're going to weight it. That's how they're able to do this. So if they are tied on a poll that's D plus 25, that means the only way they're tied is if Democrats outnumber Republicans by 25%.
5-1, yeah.
And just to be clear, ABC News ran an exit poll for 2020 for Michigan. There was no Democrat advantage. It was D+0. Same percentage of Democrats as Republicans turned out in 2020 in Michigan. And that was with widespread mail-in voting, right?
Yeah.
Fear of the pandemic. If that's not there and a larger percentage of Democrats need to actually show up,
it's going to be trouble. I mean, it's like starting a golf game and giving the other guy 25 strokes, right?
Yeah. It's not going to be D+25. Michigan is not going to be D+25.
And if that's the case, Donald Trump's up by a comfortable margin. I wouldn't say significant, but enough to make the state turn red. And that's 15 electoral votes if it goes his way.
The problem I've had with ActiVote is that their polls are typically D+5. That's what they've done across the board. So when they release a poll showing Kamala Harris up 3 and it's D+5, that tells me this is essentially a turnout election. Whichever side turns out their people more is going to win. Right? But they have to make it look like she's winning. So if we know that all of ActiVote's weighting is D+5, they have to go out of their way to weight it D+25. I imagine that the pollsters went through this and said, Donald Trump's winning 60% of suburban. He's winning 21% Democrats. He's winning 78% of independents.
We got to do something.
Let's make it D+25. And they're tied.
Good. Now we can put that poll out and sway a bunch of opinions because, gang, that is exactly what they're doing. They're just trying to sway your opinions with these crazy polls. We are just, it's not days away. Really, days away until the next election. So you got to get out there. You got to show up and vote. You got to share the show. Make sure everybody gets to see it. Like, subscribe, share, push, comment every time we're out there. Make sure it gets in front of people's eyes because otherwise, no one's going to hear this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. For sure. Well, just want to share that because polls, you're like, oh, well, that's not that bad for Trump. They're tied. And you're like, D+25. What? I've never seen that, Josh. I've never seen a statewide poll D+25. And they did it with a straight face. And they did it to hide that he's winning 78% of independents and winning 21% of Democrats. They had to weight it D+25 because anything less and the winning 21% of Democrats takes the election for him, right?
Yeah.
They had to weight it like that. Yeah. So don't rest on laurels. This is a fight, but don't let the poll discourage you because they are playing some serious games with the methodology behind the scenes. Well, that's it for this edition. Any final word?
No, I think just screw with your head. Let's go. Let's go.
That's it for this edition of the podcast. If you like it, subscribe, comment, share. We're on Rumble. We're on YouTube. We're on X. Follow us all there. We go live Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We're going to start bringing in more interviews. So if you like that kind of content, please do subscribe. And if you watch us on Twitter or X, please also subscribe to us on YouTube or Rumble as well. Just help us with our subscriber counts and all that fun stuff. We also have the audio edition of the podcast. We try and make this as audio friendly as possible. So you can find that anywhere you find audio podcasts. So please do subscribe for that. You can listen during your commutes. We make it very easy. That's it for this edition. My name is Max McGuire.
I'm Josh Hammerling.
Remember, the fight to take back our country is not over yet, but the only way we win is if we all stand up and fight together. See you next time.
See ya.